The general smirked as he took the microphone, his voice dripping with contempt. "Let me tell everyone what she really did," he announced, gesturing to the silent female officer beside him. The crowd leaned forward, eager for scandal. Security personnel shifted nervously as he aimed the remote at the screen. Her classified file appeared for just a second, before red warnings flashed across the display. "Sir, your clearance has just been revoked," a Pentagon official announced. Two agents stepped forward to escort him away, while she remained perfectly still, watching him with calm, knowing eyes. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoy stories of justice and hidden truths, consider subscribing to see more content like this. In a stark Pentagon conference room, Major Elowen Thorne sat perfectly still while staff officers shuffled past her, avoiding eye contact. A decorated uniform that should command respect instead drew whispers. She heard them clearly, though they thought their voices were low enough. "Paper pusher," someone murmured, just loudly enough for others to hear. 12 years and still a major. Must have powerful friends. Another voice replied, "Or just filling a quota." Elowen neither flinched nor acknowledged the comments. Her service record appeared unremarkable to anyone who bothered to look, which few did. 12 years, 3 quiet tours, minimal commendations. Just enough to remain in service, but never enough to stand out. She focused on arranging her notes for the briefing, each page perfectly aligned, while around her the room filled with decorated officers whose ribbons and medals told stories of heroism and sacrifice. Elowen's uniform bore only the most basic decorations, nothing that would draw a second glance. In the hallway outside, applause erupted. The conference room fell silent as General Raymond Caldwell strode through the doorway, gleaming with charm and confidence. A full-bird colonel rushed to pull out his chair, while a lieutenant poured his coffee. Caldwell nodded his thanks without really seeing either of them. "Let's begin," he announced, though the meeting had been scheduled to start 15 minutes earlier. Elowen waited her turn to present, listening as officers detailed operations in various global hotspots. When finally called upon, she stood and approached the screen, her voice measured and clinical as she presented logistics reports for Operation Silverback. "Major, these numbers seem unusually efficient," Caldwell interrupted, studying her with sudden interest. "How did you manage to reduce transport costs by 20% while increasing delivery speed?" "Sir, I simply consolidated redundant supply chains and negotiated better terms with our contractors," she replied. "Simply?" Caldwell's eyebrow raised. "Nothing about military logistics is simple, Major. Perhaps you should share your methods with the rest of the logistics corps." A few officers chuckled, the sound carrying a hint of mockery rather than appreciation. Elowen nodded once, her expression unchanged. "Yes, sir. I can prepare a full briefing if requested." "That won't be necessary," Caldwell waved dismissively. "Continue." Later, as officers filed out of the room, Caldwell's aide approached him. "Sir, the final arrangements for tomorrow night's Medal of Honor ceremony are complete. All guests have confirmed attendance." "Excellent," Caldwell replied, his eyes following Elowen as she gathered her materials. "One more thing, Captain. Did you place Major Thorne at table 19, far corner?" The aide consulted his tablet. "As requested, sir, though I'm still not sure why you want her there at all. The ceremony has nothing to do with logistics." Caldwell's lips curved slightly. "Let's call it correcting an oversight. Some people fly under the radar for too long." His eyes narrowed. "It's time to bring Major Thorne into the spotlight." The White House Military Honors Banquet unfolded with pageantry the following evening. Dignitaries, military elites, and press filled the room, conversations blending into a constant hum, punctuated by occasional laughter. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over dress uniforms adorned with medals and ribbons. At table 19, Elowen sat alone in a sea of empty chairs. Her dress uniform was impeccable, but unadorned compared to the others in attendance. She surveyed the room with quiet attention, occasionally checking her watch. Across the room, Caldwell held court with joint chiefs and political figures, occasionally glancing toward Elowen with unsettling interest. He nodded at appropriate moments in conversation, while his attention remained fixed elsewhere. "You've been watching Major Thorne all evening," remarked the Secretary of the Army. "Is there something I should know?" Just keeping an eye on a person of interest, Caldwell replied. Nothing to concern yourself with, yet. At table 19, a lieutenant commander named Desmond Farrow approached Delawan, standing awkwardly before sitting uninvited. His dress uniform bore combat decorations from multiple theaters, but his demeanor lacked the confidence typical of decorated officers. "You don't remember me, do you?" he asked, his voice low. Delawan studied him carefully, her gaze moving methodically from his face to his decorations and back. Something in her posture shifted, almost imperceptibly. "Kabul, 2018, Farrow continued when she didn't answer. "Medical evacuation that wasn't in any report." A slight tension appeared in her jaw, though her expression remained neutral. Before she could respond, a Pentagon aide appeared at her shoulder, interrupting the moment. "Major Thorne, General Caldwell has requested your presence on stage," the aide announced, gesturing toward the front of the room where a podium stood illuminated. "Now?" Delawan asked, her first display of surprise all evening. "Yes, ma'am, immediately." As Delawan rose to follow the aide, Farrow caught her wrist. The gesture was brief but intimate, the touch of someone who had once known permission to breach her personal space. "Be careful," he whispered. "Something isn't right." Delawan gave a single nod before following the aide through tables of curious onlookers. Conversations quieted as she passed, eyes following her progress. Most expressions showed confusion rather than recognition. At the head table, Secretary of Defense Lowell leaned toward an aide, his expression concerned. "Who authorized this change in program? The general isn't scheduled to speak for another 30 minutes, and there's nothing about Major Thorne in the program at all." The aide shrugged helplessly. "It came directly from General Caldwell's office an hour ago. We were told it was a special recognition." In the audience, an intelligence officer named Aviva Mercer touched her earpiece, frowning at what she heard. Her eyes tracked Delawan's progress toward the stage before making a subtle hand signal to colleagues positioned around the room. 3 men and 2 women, scattered throughout the banquet hall, casually shifted positions to improve their sightlines. As Delawan climbed the steps to the stage, the room's ambient noise faded to expectant silence. General Caldwell stepped to the podium, his Medal of Honor citation folded neatly in his breast pocket, though tonight was merely the banquet before tomorrow's official White House ceremony. Caldwell welcomed Delawan with a theatrical arm around her shoulder, microphone in hand. The gesture appeared collegial, but his fingers gripped her uniform with unnecessary force. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying the practiced warmth of a man accustomed to public speaking. "We gather tonight to honor exceptional service and sacrifice. But before we proceed with our scheduled program, I think it's time we acknowledged the real Major Thorne, don't you?" The room fell uncomfortably silent. Delawan stood at parade rest beside him, her expression revealing nothing. In the audience, Secretary Lowell exchanged concerned glances with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. "Major Delawan Thorne," Caldwell continued, gesturing toward the main display where her basic service record appeared. 12 years of service, 3 tours, minimal decorations, current assignment, logistics coordination. He paused, allowing the underwhelming summary to register with the audience. "Not much to show for over a decade of service, is it?" He smiled, though the expression didn't reach his eyes. "But this isn't the real record, is it, Major?" Delawan remained silent, her gaze fixed on a point at the back of the room. If she felt embarrassment or concern at being the center of attention, neither showed on her face. "Not that record," Caldwell said, pressing a remote in his hand. "The real one." The display flickered momentarily before a classified header appeared. The text too small for most to read, but the red borders unmistakable. A murmur spread through the audience as people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Delawan's hand moved slowly to her pocket, fingering something small and metallic inside. Her breathing remained steady while her eyes flicked briefly to Desmond Farrow, who had risen slightly from his seat. In the back of the room, Aviva Mercer spoke rapidly into her wrist mic while moving toward a control panel near the exit. 2 of her colleagues were already moving toward the stage, their movements casual but purposeful. "For years," Caldwell continued, voice dripping with affected concern, "we've been told Major Thorne has been a logistics specialist, but I discovered something very different." He clicked the remote again, revealing fragments of a heavily redacted document. "Operation Blackstone, 7 civilians reported dead. The only officer present? Elowen Thorne. The audience murmured in shock. Some guests exchanged confused glances, while others stared openly at Elowen, who remained expressionless, hands now clasped behind her back. In a corner, Secretary Lowell signaled frantically to security personnel. Caldwell's smile widened at the reaction, his confidence growing visible with each passing second. He turned slightly toward Elowen, speaking for her ears alone before returning to the microphone. "Did you think no one would find out? That your friends would protect you forever?" he whispered. Elowen's eyes met his directly for the first time. Something in her gaze made him step back slightly, a momentary flicker of uncertainty crossing his features before he recovered his composure. "That's just the beginning," Caldwell continued, clicking again. $3 million in unaccounted funds, a diplomatic incident in Kyrgyzstan, and most damning, the screen abruptly froze, displaying a security warning in bold red letters. Unauthorized access attempt. Security protocol initiated. Caldwell tapped the remote repeatedly, growing visibly frustrated as nothing happened. The audience watched in confused silence. The festive atmosphere of the banquet entirely evaporated. In the audience, Desmond Farrow stood, hand reaching inside his jacket. Across the room, 4 other individuals mirrored his movement. None drew weapons, instead reaching for credentials concealed within their formal attire. A stern voice cut through the room's PA system. "General Caldwell, this is Pentagon Security Protocol Delta 7. Stand down immediately." Caldwell ignored the warning, abandoning the remote to access his phone. "I've downloaded everything. The public deserves to know what's happening with their tax dollars, what people like her are really doing in the name of national security." As he spoke, his phone screen went dark. All electronic devices in the room momentarily flickered as a security protocol activated, disabling unauthorized communications. Caldwell stared at his phone in disbelief, tapping frantically at the dark screen. "Raymond James Caldwell," a new voice announced from the back of the room. The crowd parted as Admiral Zaria Neves, Director of Naval Intelligence, walked deliberately toward the stage. Her dress uniform bore the quiet authority of decades of service, and her expression conveyed absolute certainty. 2 security officers flanked her, their posture indicating they were prepared for resistance. "Your security clearance is hereby revoked by direct order of the Joint Intelligence Committee," Admiral Neves stated, her voice carrying throughout the now silent room. "This is absurd," Caldwell blustered, his face flushing with anger. "I'm receiving the Medal of Honor tomorrow. I have the highest clearance possible." "Not anymore," Admiral Neves responded calmly. She nodded to the security officers. "Please escort General Caldwell from the stage." The security officers moved forward, their expressions professional but unyielding. One positioned himself between Caldwell and Elowen, while the other gestured toward the steps. "Sir, please come with us," the officer said quietly. Caldwell's eyes darted around the room, seeking allies or escape. Finding neither, his shoulders slumped slightly before his training reasserted itself. He straightened his uniform jacket and walked with forced dignity toward the steps. As he passed Elowen, he leaned close. "This isn't over. They can't protect you forever." She met his gaze without flinching. "They aren't protecting me, General." Confusion flickered across his face before the security officers firmly guided him away. The audience watched in stunned silence as Caldwell, who hours earlier had been the evening's guest of honor, was escorted toward a side exit. Elowen remained standing alone on stage, the harsh spotlight emphasizing her isolation. The room buzzed with confusion, guests turning to one another with questions no one could answer. Several journalists began typing frantically on their phones, only to discover all communications within the room had been temporarily disabled. Secretary Lowell approached the podium, his expression a careful mask of diplomatic calm. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the disruption. This ceremony will continue after a brief recess. Please enjoy refreshments in the adjacent hall while we reset the program." Staff rushed to direct guests toward the exits. In the controlled chaos, few noticed Desmond Farrow and Aviva Mercer converging on the stage where Elowen stood, still motionless. "Chimera protocol activated," Aviva whispered when they reached her, positioning herself to block onlookers' view. "Your cover's been compromised. We need to move to contingency." Elowen nodded once, her first visible reaction to the evening's events. How did he get that information? That's what we need to find out, Desmond responded grimly. Because if he has it, then others might too, Elowen finished. Her gaze drifted to where Caldwell was being led toward a service corridor. For a split second, the general locked eyes with someone in the crowd, a military attaché from the Russian embassy, and gave an almost imperceptible nod. Elowen noticed. We have a bigger problem than my cover, she said quietly. Agreed, Aviva replied. The Chimera files were triple encrypted and air-gapped. There's only one way he could have accessed them. Inside help, Desmond concluded. Elowen's hand returned to her pocket, fingers closing around the small metal object. We need to move now. The aide... Already on it, Aviva said, touching her earpiece. Teams are tracking all of Caldwell's staff. No one leaves the building. As they spoke, Admiral Neves approached, her expression grave. Captain Thorne, she said, using a rank Elowen didn't officially hold. Secure room 3, 20 minutes. Elowen nodded, Yes, Admiral. And Captain, Neves added, burn protocol is in effect, all contingencies. The implications settled over the small group. Burn protocol meant scorched earth. Every identity, safe house, and operation connected to Elowen would be dismantled. Years of work, destroyed in hours. Understood, Elowen replied, her voice steady despite the weight of those 2 syllables. As the banquet hall emptied, security teams quietly secured exits and began interviewing key personnel. Aviva led Elowen and Desmond through a staff corridor toward a service elevator, bypassing the confused crowds in the main hallway. Your apartment is already being cleared, Aviva informed Elowen as the elevator descended. All physical assets will be relocated to secure storage. Digital footprint erasure began the moment Caldwell accessed the first file. Elowen absorbed this without visible reaction. My neighbors? Cover story is in place. Unexpected family emergency requiring immediate relocation. The elevator opened into a sub-level parking garage where an unmarked sedan waited, engine running. A driver in civilian clothes opened the rear door as they approached. Transport secure, ma'am, he reported. Thank you, Specialist, Elowen replied, recognizing him despite his civilian disguise. Standard evasion protocols. Yes, ma'am. Inside the vehicle, screens embedded in the privacy partition activated as they pulled away from the White House complex. Aviva tapped commands on a secure tablet, bringing up surveillance footage of Caldwell being processed in a holding room. He's demanding counsel and claiming this is politically motivated, she reported. Classic deflection? Elowen studied the footage, her focus absolute. Who's handling his interrogation? Director Kelly personally. They've served together for 20 years. If anyone can break through his defenses, it's Kelly. Desmond leaned forward. What about the Russian attaché, Orlov? Under surveillance. We can't touch him without diplomatic incident, but he's not leaving our sight. The sedan navigated Washington's evening traffic with practiced efficiency, taking seemingly random turns to detect and discourage potential surveillance. After 20 minutes of counterintelligence driving, they arrived at a nondescript government building several miles from the White House. Inside, security measures intensified with each door they passed. Retinal scanners, fingerprint readers, and armed guards created layers of protection around the Pentagon's most secure conference room. Secure Room 3, the final guard announced, verifying their credentials before stepping aside. The room beyond was spartanly furnished with a conference table, chairs, and state-of-the-art communication equipment. Secretary Lowell was already seated, along with Admiral Neves, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and the Director of National Intelligence. All rose when Elowen entered. Major, Secretary Lowell began, then corrected himself. Captain Thorne, please be seated. Elowen, still in her dress uniform from the banquet, took the offered chair. She appeared calm despite being surrounded by the highest-ranking military and intelligence officials in the country. For those not familiar, Admiral Neves began, I need to formally introduce Commander Elowen Thorne, Deputy Director of Special Activities Center, and the architect of our most successful deep cover intelligence operation in 50 years. The use of yet another rank, Commander, raised eyebrows around the table, but no one interrupted. Operation Chimera, Neves continued, has been active for 9 years. During that time, Commander Thorne has maintained deep cover as a mid-level logistics officer while coordinating our most sensitive counterintelligence operations. The DNI opened a secure tablet, activating a protected display. Operation Chimera has neutralized 17 critical threats to national security over those 9 years. The logistics specialist cover was designed to place Commander Thorne in proximity to high-value intelligence targets while appearing utterly unremarkable. What General Caldwell stumbled upon, Secretary Lowell added, was a deliberate counterintelligence plant, false information designed to be found by our adversaries. The operation in Kyrgyzstan, the chairman spoke, his voice carrying the weight of authority. That was your work? Yes, sir, Elowen replied. We identified 3 deep-cover Russian operatives within our diplomatic corps and turned them. They've been feeding controlled information back to Moscow for 18 months. And the missing funds? Never missing, sir. Redirected through 16 cutouts to finance the extraction of a high-value asset from Tehran. Asset Bluebird is now safely resettled with family in Montana. The chairman nodded, impressed despite himself. What about Operation Blackstone, the civilian casualties? For the first time, emotion flickered across Elowen's face, a brief flash of grief quickly contained. Those weren't civilians, sir. They were a North Korean assassination team targeting our nuclear scientists. We intercepted them 10 miles from Los Alamos. I remember the cover story, the chairman said. Gas line explosion in an abandoned warehouse. Yes, sir. My team neutralized the threat, but we lost 2 of our own in the process. The civilians reported dead were our operatives. Their families received the full benefits package through secure channels. The DNI leaned forward. What Caldwell didn't know was that he himself was under investigation. His Medal of Honor nomination created the perfect opportunity for him to access certain classified systems. We needed to confirm our suspicions. Admiral Neves turned to Elowen. Show them. Elowen activated a display, revealing surveillance footage of General Caldwell meeting with a known foreign operative in what appeared to be a hotel room. The timestamp indicated the meeting had occurred just 3 weeks earlier. For 14 months, Caldwell has been passing classified information to Russian intelligence, Elowen explained. His attempt to discredit me was actually an attempt to disrupt our entire counterintelligence apparatus. Why you specifically? Secretary Lowell asked. Because I was getting close, Elowen replied. Operation Chimera recently identified a potential mole in Pentagon leadership. We narrowed it to 3 candidates. Caldwell was one of them. And he discovered he was under investigation? Not exactly, Elowen said. He discovered some of our operational details, but didn't realize the significance. He thought he'd found evidence of corruption or incompetence, something he could use to deflect attention from himself. He didn't realize those files were deliberately placed for him to find. A knock at the door interrupted them. Aviva entered with Desmond, both now in tactical gear rather than dress uniforms. Between them stood a third individual in handcuffs, Caldwell's aide. Captain Ellis, Desmond announced, using the aide's name and rank. Found attempting to delete files from General Caldwell's personal server. He's confirmed everything. Ellis looked defeated, his posture slumped and eyes downcast. They have my sister, he said quietly, in Moscow. They said they'd hurt her if I didn't help. Caldwell was being blackmailed initially, Desmond reported, then started accepting payments. He was planning to use tonight to deflect attention before fleeing the country. His Medal of Honor ceremony would be his last public appearance before disappearing during a fishing trip planned for next week. Where to? Asked the chairman. Venezuela initially, then Russia via diplomatic channels. The room fell silent as the implications settled. A decorated general, days away from receiving the nation's highest military honor, revealed as a traitor. What happens now? Asked the DNI, breaking the silence. Elowen turned off the display. My cover identity is compromised. Chimera is burned. No one spoke for several moments. 9 years of deep cover work, countless operations, networks of assets and informants, all potentially exposed. Not entirely, Admiral Neves said finally, her voice cutting through the heavy silence. Commander Thorne, effective immediately, you are promoted to captain and officially assigned as special advisor to the Joint Intelligence Task Force. Elowen's confusion showed briefly before understanding dawned. A new cover. Neves nodded. Your new cover isn't invisibility. It's hiding in plain sight. The world now knows that Elowen Thorne isn't just a logistics officer. They'll assume you're being promoted to a proper intelligence role after being unfairly targeted by Caldwell. Meanwhile, the secretary added, we'll use the opportunity to transition critical operations to backup handlers. The networks you've built remain intact, just under new management. And Caldwell? Elowen asked. The DNI's expression hardened. He'll be prosecuted quietly, maximum security detention at Fort Leavenworth. The official story will be that he suffered a mental health crisis and is receiving treatment at a private facility. And the Medal of Honor? Rescinded, of course. Tomorrow's ceremony will proceed with an alternate recipient. The chairman stood, approaching Elowen with solemn respect. His weathered face carried the weight of decades of service and sacrifice. I knew your father, he said quietly. Colonel Soren Thorne. We served together in Kosovo. He would be proud. He offered a crisp salute, which Elowen returned, her composure finally wavering at the mention of her father. One by one, everyone in the room stood and saluted. It was a recognition few deep-cover operatives ever received, acknowledgement from the highest levels of military leadership. As the meeting concluded, Elowen remained seated, reviewing operational details with Aviva and Desmond. The others filed out, leaving them to the technical work of dismantling and preserving years of intelligence infrastructure. We need to contact all field assets immediately, Elowen instructed. Priority 1 is anyone directly connected to my cover identity. Get them to safe houses until we can assess exposure levels. Aviva nodded, already typing commands into a secure terminal. Teams are standing by, extraction protocols initialized for high-risk assets. What about Orlov? Desmond asked. The Russian attaché? Let him run, Elowen said. Monitor but don't interfere. I want to see who he contacts when he thinks he's won. As they worked, a message appeared on the main display. Admiral Neves calling from a secure location elsewhere in the building. Captain Thorne, she said, using Elowen's new rank. There's been a development. We found something in Caldwell's personal effects, something you need to see. The screen split to show an image of a small photograph, worn at the edges from handling. It showed a much younger Elowen in casual clothes, standing beside Colonel Soren Thorne. Both were smiling. This was in Caldwell's wallet, Neves explained. Not a copy, the original. Elowen stared at the image, recognition and confusion battling in her expression. That's impossible. That photo was buried with my father. Exactly, Neves replied gravely. Which means someone exhumed his body. We need to know why. Elowen's gaze hardened, her hand again finding the small metal object in her pocket, a miniature replica of the intelligence star her father had received posthumously. I think I know, she said quietly, placing the star on the table. And if I'm right, Caldwell isn't the mastermind. He's just the first piece of a much larger puzzle. The following morning dawned clear and crisp, autumn sunlight streaming through the windows of the White House East Room, where the Medal of Honor ceremony would proceed. Chairs arranged in precise rows faced the podium, where the president would present the nation's highest military decoration. The room buzzed with subdued conversation, the events of the previous evening having reached the attendees in carefully controlled fragments. Official statements described General Caldwell's absence as a health matter requiring immediate attention, with no mention of security clearances or classified information. The press had been provided with a revised program featuring a different Medal of Honor recipient, the change explained as a scheduling adjustment to accommodate Caldwell's medical needs. Behind the scenes, a different story unfolded. In a private room adjacent to the ceremony space, Captain Elowen Thorne stood before a mirror in her dress uniform, newly adorned with the insignia of her actual rank, rather than the major's oak leaves she had worn for years. The uniform felt strange after so long in her undercover role, like a costume rather than her true identity. Aviva Mercer entered, closing the door quietly behind her. The president has been fully briefed. He's authorized all protocols. Elowen nodded, adjusting her collar. And our other concern? Teams are in position. If anything happens, we're ready. Desmond Farrow joined them, his uniform now bearing the Medal of Honor ribbon he had earned but never publicly received for the operation in Kabul. Security sweep complete, The room is clean. Elowen turned from the mirror. Then let's proceed. They entered the East Room through a side door as the ceremony began. The audience rose as the president arrived, followed by military leadership and distinguished guests. Secretary of Defense Lowell delivered opening remarks, his words carefully crafted to honor service and sacrifice, while avoiding any mention of the previous night's disruption. Today, Lowell concluded, we recognize extraordinary courage and commitment to our nation's highest ideals. It is my privilege to introduce the President of the United States. The President approached the podium, his expression solemn as he addressed the gathering. The Medal of Honor represents the best of America, selflessness, valor, and unwavering dedication to duty. Today, we recognize Lieutenant Commander Desmond Farrow, whose actions in Kabul saved 27 lives under circumstances so classified that until today, they could not be publicly acknowledged. Murmurs rippled through the audience. In the world of military decorations, classified citations were rare, reserved for operations whose details remained too sensitive for public disclosure. I have authorized a partial declassification of these events, the president continued, so that we may properly honor Commander Farrow's extraordinary service. Desmond rose and approached the stage as the citation was read, detailing his actions during a covert extraction operation that had gone catastrophically wrong. The audience listened in rapt attention as the narrative unfolded. A medical evacuation ambushed by insurgents, communications lost, and Desmond, then a lieutenant, taking command after the team leader fell. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty, the president concluded, the United States of America presents the Medal of Honor to Lieutenant Commander Desmond Farrow. The president placed the medal around Desmond's neck, the blue ribbon stark against his uniform. As tradition dictated, he then turned to face the audience, standing at attention. The president returned to the podium. In an unusual but appropriate addition to today's ceremony, Commander Farrow has requested that the officer who authorized and coordinated the mission present his citation. It is my honor to introduce Captain Elowen Thorne. A collective intake of breath swept the room as Elowen approached the stage. The audience recognized her from the previous night's disruption, but now she moved with confident authority rather than the deliberate invisibility she had cultivated for years. Elowen took her place beside Desmond, accepting the framed citation from the president. She turned to face the audience, her voice clear and carrying to the back of the room. Lieutenant Commander Farrow's actions exemplify the highest traditions of military service, she began. What the citation cannot fully convey is the impossible situation he faced, surrounded by enemy combatants, protecting critically wounded personnel, with no reasonable expectation of survival. She turned slightly toward Desmond. He was authorized to use any means necessary to destroy classified equipment and prevent the capture of sensitive personnel. Instead, he found a third option that saved both his team and the mission. That kind of thinking, that refusal to accept only the options presented, represents the best of what we do. The audience listened in respectful silence, many seeing for the first time the intelligence officer who had been hiding in plain sight for years. In the front row, former Table 19 was now filled with intelligence officers who had served under Elowen's command, operatives who had never been publicly acknowledged. Admiral Neves sat among them, nodding approvingly. After presenting the citation, Elowen stepped back, allowing Desmond his moment of recognition. The ceremony proceeded according to protocol, concluding with the president's final remarks and the playing of the national anthem. As guests mingled during the reception that followed, Elowen found herself approached by officers and officials who had previously overlooked her, now eager to make connections with the newly revealed intelligence officer. She navigated these interactions with professional courtesy, but maintained the reserve that had served her well throughout her career. "Captain Thorne," a familiar voice called. Secretary Lowell approached, accompanied by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. "The president has requested a brief meeting before you depart." Elowen nodded. "Of course, sir." They led her through the White House to the Oval Office, where the president waited with Admiral Neves. After brief formalities, the president gestured for everyone to be seated. "Captain, I wanted to personally thank you for your service," he began. "Admiral Neves has shared as much as she can about Operation Chimera, and I'm frankly astounded by what you've accomplished. Thank you, Mr. President. I understand there's more to General Caldwell's situation than a simple case of espionage. Alowan glanced at Admiral Neves, who nodded her permission to proceed. Yes, sir. We believe Caldwell was recruited as part of a long-standing operation targeting our intelligence infrastructure. The photograph found in his possession belonged to my father, Colonel Soren Thorne. Your father died in the line of duty, the president stated. Yes, sir. In Kosovo, officially. In reality, he was directing a deep cover operation penetrating Russian intelligence networks. His death was reported as a vehicle accident, but we've now confirmed it was an assassination. The president's expression darkened. And you believe there's a connection to Caldwell? We know there is, Alowan replied. Caldwell was stationed in the Balkans when my father was killed. After examining his financial records, we found irregular deposits beginning 3 weeks after my father's death. The same pattern appears with 5 other officers who were present in the region. A recruitment drive, the chairman murmured. Exactly, sir. We believe whoever killed my father used the intelligence they gathered to identify and turn vulnerable officers. Caldwell was just one of several long-term assets they cultivated. And you've been hunting them ever since, the president concluded. Operation Chimera was designed with that objective, yes. When I joined intelligence services after my father's death, I created a cover identity that would attract minimal attention while giving me access to the information I needed. Well, the president said after a moment, it seems we owe you a debt of gratitude that can never be fully acknowledged publicly. That's not necessary, sir. The work itself is enough. Later that afternoon, Alowan cleared her old office, a small, forgettable room tucked away in the Pentagon's least trafficked corridor. Years of careful anonymity had accumulated in this space. Generic office supplies, unadorned walls, nothing that suggested the significance of the work done here. As she removed a single photograph, her father in uniform, from the desk drawer where it had remained hidden for years, Aviva appeared at the door. Ready for your new office? It has windows. Alowan smiled slightly. I've worked without windows for 12 years. I'm not sure I need them now. It's not about need, Aviva responded. Some lights deserve to shine. They walked together through corridors that felt different now. Where once Alowan had moved like a shadow, deliberately forgettable, now her passage drew notice. Officers who had previously ignored her stopped to offer congratulations or respect. Some seemed embarrassed by their past dismissal, others curious about who she really was. They'll adjust, Aviva said, noting Alowan's discomfort with the attention. In a week, you'll be old news. I'm counting on it, Alowan replied. Being invisible had advantages. True, but so does having actual authority. No more working through proxies and cutouts. You can build your own team now, run operations directly. They reached a corridor housing senior intelligence staff offices. Aviva stopped at a door bearing a newly installed nameplate. Captain Alowan Thorne, Special Advisor, Joint Intelligence Command. Your new cover, Aviva said, hiding in plain sight. The office beyond was spacious and well-appointed, with windows overlooking the Potomac and walls ready for the secure displays Alowan would need. It felt exposed after years in the windowless office, but she recognized the practical advantages of the space. We've implemented all security protocols, Aviva continued. The room is SIF compliant with additional countermeasures against surveillance. Thank you, Aviva, for everything. Just doing my job, which reminds me, Desmond's team has completed initial surveillance on the 5 officers connected to your father's case. 3 are confirmed compromised. The other 2 remain under observation. Good. Keep me updated. After Aviva departed, Alowan stood alone in her new office, adjusting to this evolution in her career. For so long, she had defined herself by her invisibility, by the absence of recognition or acknowledgement. Now she would need to adapt to a different kind of operation, one conducted from a position of official authority rather than careful manipulation from the shadows. She placed her father's photograph on the desk, no longer hidden, but prominently displayed. Beside it, she set the intelligence star that had been her talisman throughout her years under cover. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. A young lieutenant stood in the doorway, a file folder in hand. Captain Thorne, I've been assigned as your administrative assistant. These require your signature for your new security credentials. Alowan gestured for him to enter. Thank you, Lieutenant. As he placed the folder on her desk, his gaze fell on the photograph. "Sir, if you don't mind my asking, is that Colonel Thorne, the one who—" "Yes," Elowen replied. "My father." The lieutenant straightened respectfully. "I studied his Kosovo operation at the academy. His tactics saved hundreds of lives. I didn't realize they taught that case. It's part of the advanced intelligence curriculum now. They call it the Thorne Doctrine, using minimal resources for maximum impact while maintaining plausible deniability." Elowen smiled slightly. He would have hated having a doctrine named after him. He always said good intelligence work should be invisible. "Like yours has been?" the lieutenant asked, then immediately looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry, ma'am. That was inappropriate." "It's all right, Lieutenant. Yes, like mine has been, though that chapter is now closed." After the lieutenant departed, Elowen walked to the window, looking out over Washington. In the reflection of the glass, she could see both her father's photograph and her new office, the past and future of her career connected in a single moment. Later that afternoon, she walked through the Pentagon corridors toward a meeting with her new team. The hallways felt different now, no longer places to be invisible, but paths connecting her to a broader mission. She passed a wall of decorated generals' portraits, including a blank space where Caldwell's photo had been removed, awaiting a replacement. Stopping at a memorial wall honoring the fallen, she traced a name with her finger, Colonel Soren Thorne, listed among those who died in service to their country. Next to his name was a simple intelligence star, the CIA's highest honor, recognizing service that could never be fully disclosed. Elowen reached into her pocket and withdrew the matching star pin she had carried throughout her career, the one she had clutched during the banquet as Caldwell attempted to expose her. She studied it briefly before placing it on the wall beside her father's name, completing a circle begun decades earlier. As she turned to leave, a young lieutenant watched her with unmistakable admiration, the same one who had delivered her credentials earlier. "Were you one of them?" the lieutenant asked quietly. "One of the invisible ones?" Elowen considered the question. "We're all invisible until someone takes the time to truly see us." She offered a small, genuine smile. "The question is what they see when they finally do." As she walked away, sunlight streamed through windows, illuminating her path forward. Behind her, the two intelligence stars caught the light, twin points of brightness against the somber wall of names. Beneath her new office door, a small plaque had been added since her morning visit. It read, "Invisibility is not absence. It is presence, without distraction." Admiral Nevis's handwriting was unmistakable on the accompanying note. "Your father's words, now yours to carry forward." Elowen touched the plaque briefly before entering, ready to step from shadow into light without losing the strength she had found in darkness.